Hello Year 6 and welcome to the Friday Maths Challenge for the 22nd of May. Okay, now just as last week, these challenges get harder as you go through, so you may want to have a go at the first few, you might want to go all the way through. So these are just some hints for you to give you a bit of a helping hand. So we've got the challenge for you on the website, but we've also got the answers as well, so you can check the work that you've done. Don't forget that these slides can just give you a bit of a hint. So if you want to work with the slides, you can. If you feel like, oh, I just want to have a think about how to do that. If you feel confident and you want to go for it yourself, that's absolutely fine. Okay. Okay, so I think you'll be able to do the first few quite well. Now, with number 3, just make sure you read it carefully, won't you? But I think you'll be fine with those. So we'll have a look at challenge number 4. So just have a look and see what you notice about this question. Okay, so we can see that it's a regular hexagon. So what does that mean about the length of all the sides and all the angles? Yeah, they're going to be the same. So I know that the 42 centimetre perimeter of the hexagon at the top is going to be evenly spread about each of those sides. So how many sides does a hexagon have? So if I divide the number of sides by the perimeter, that should give me the length of one side. Then we can work out how many sides are showing on this shape below. And we multiply that by the length of one side. Don't forget to make a note of where you start counting around the shape. You don't want to keep going round and round and adding too many sides, do you? Okay, so for challenge number 5, just have a moment to read this. Okay, so what do we know? We know there's a half full can of paint, don't we? How much does Charlie use painting his house? Yeah, he uses a quarter of it, doesn't he? Because it was half full, and now there's a quarter left. And a half, take away a quarter gives you a quarter. So can you work out how much a quarter of a can of paint weighs? Will you be able to calculate how much an empty can of paint weighs if you know how much a quarter is? Remember, there's only a quarter left. See if you can find out what the empty tin weighs. Okay, so you might want to pause this again and see what you notice about challenge 6. Okay, so we know there's 5 equal sections. We also know that the sections are placed in a circle. Do you know anything about the angles around a point? What do they add up to? That's right, they add up to 360. So if you know that there are 5 equal sections, and if you know that the angle around a point, the middle of our spinner, is 360 degrees, can you work out the degrees that one section is worth? How many sections would the spinner have moved through if it moves through to the centre of D? Can you then use that to calculate how many degrees the angle has been rotated through? Okay, so just take a moment to notice anything you can about this problem. Do you know what the word congruent means? It means that although those triangles might be moved around and facing in different directions or rotated, they all have the same lengths, the same angles. That means that the short length on all of those triangles is the same. They're congruent triangles. Okay, so we're going to use that to help us work out the area of one of the triangles. Is there anything else you noticed that could help you work out the length of one of the triangles? Remember, if you can work this out by yourself, please carry on and do it. If not, keep listening for hints. Okay, so I first these two sides. Remember, they're the same, they're congruent, aren't they? What's the length of those two sides altogether? Can you work out what one of the sides is? Okay. Then I notice these sides appear here. I know that both of them together are 16 centimetres. Can you see the gap in the middle? That's one of the shorter sides. Now look at the length at the bottom of our rectangle. That tells me that those two long sides and the one short side that I don't know its length yet, altogether they're 21 centimetres. Now those two red sides, I know that they are 16 centimetres, so I should be able to work out the length that's left. So now we need to work out the area of the triangles. Do you remember how to work out the area of the triangles? Base times height and then divide by 2. Okay, so if we know the base, the short edge, and if we know the height, the long edge, we can multiply them together and then divide by 2 to give me the area of one triangle. Okay, so have a little look at challenge 8 and see what we've got here. Now you might notice that we've got some fractions, and we've been doing some fractions, haven't we? So let's have a little look at it, thinking about fractions. I'm also going to use a bar model to help you. Okay, so here we've got our first amount that Chloe spends on a book. She spends a quarter of her money on a book. So what's the next fraction that we've got? She spends 5/12 on some headphones. Now I don't want to keep those fractions as quarters and as twelfths, because it's difficult to compare them and to add them and to see what's left. So what do I do to my quarters to turn them into twelfths? So to get them to have the same denominator, I need to multiply a quarter by 3, because 3 times 4 gives me 12. So how many twelfths did she spend on a book? How many twelfths does she spend on a headphone? So how many twelfths has she got left? If you want to, you can have a look at the boxes and count them, or you can just do some simple maths by adding 3 twelfths and 5 twelfths. You'll need to have a think about how many twelfths are, of course, in a whole. Yeah, 12 twelfths. So how much did she spend on the toaster? £24. But what's this amount as a twelfth? Okay, did you have 4 twelfths left over? Let's just check that. 3 twelfths on the book, 5 twelfths on the headphones. 3 and 5 is 8. How many twelfths do we have that haven't been spent yet? That's right. We've got 4 twelfths. Now I know that that 4 twelfths was spent on the toaster, and I know that 4 twelfths is the same as £24. How is that going to help me work out how much a book cost? Okay, so I've drawn on now in green boxes the amount that she spent on the toaster. Now we agreed that it was 4 twelfths and it was £24. So let's have a look at this. We know that those 4 twelfths are worth £24. Can you work out what 1 twelfth is? How would you do that? What maths would you use? Okay, once you know what 1 twelfth is, can you see the blue blocks? That's how much she spent on the book. Now, if you know the amount that one of those is in money, can you work out what 3 of them is? Okay, so as always, pause it and have a little look and see what this challenge is asking you to do. Okay, so what do we know? What's the information that we've got? So we know how fast Annie is driving. She's driving at 40 miles an hour. Remember, that means in 1 hour she will have driven 40 miles. Okay, now let's stick with Annie before we look at what Tariq has done. So on the third line down, it tells us that Annie leaves the first town at 9 and arrives at the second town of 10:30. So how long does it take Annie to drive from one town to the other? It takes her an hour and a half, doesn't it? Now, if I know that in 1 hour she can cover 40 miles, how far does she drive in half an hour? That should tell us the distance between the two towns. So in 1 hour, she travels 40 miles. In half an hour, she'll travel 20 miles, half that distance. So the two towns are 60 miles apart. Okay. So you might want to make a note of that somewhere if you're doing a drawing to help you. So now let's look at Tariq. What does he do? We know how fast he goes, don't we? He goes at 25 miles an hour. I'm going to do the same for Tariq as we did for Annie. Even though the numbers are a little bit more complicated, I'm still going to do the same. How far does Tariq go in an hour? Okay. So then maybe in 2 hours, how far will he have gone? Will he have finished his journey? Remember, the distance was 60 miles. Will he have gone 60 miles in 2 hours? No, he still wouldn't have, will he? How much has he got left to travel? He's got another 10 miles to do. So let's go back and think about Tariq again. How many minutes are there in an hour? 60 minutes. In 60 minutes, he does 25 miles. I haven't got a full 25 miles left. I've just got 10 miles that I need to know how long it takes him. Okay, so I want to find out how far he's going in a smaller unit of time. Let's look at the numbers that we've got. Okay, so I'm going to start making some notes. Remember, if you can work this out by yourself, carry on, go on to the next question. If not, then you might want to listen. Okay, so I know that Tariq travels 25 miles an hour. There's 60 minutes in an hour, and in those 60 minutes he travels 25 miles. So I know that it takes him 2 hours to travel 50 miles, don't I? Okay, what else do I know? I'm going to think about these numbers in a minute because it's going to help me figure out this next bit. I know that in 2 hours he travels 50 miles, don't I? But he's got 10 more miles to go because the whole journey is 60 miles. So how can I figure out 10 more miles? Let's have a really good look at those numbers, the numbers in red. So I'm going to look at just the 25 miles. I want to make it into a smaller number of miles, one that I can calculate with more easily. I want to know how long it's going to take him to do those 10 miles. So what can I do to 25 to make it a number that I can calculate with more easily? I can divide it by 5, and this will tell me how long it takes him to travel 5 miles. So to do that, I need to divide the 60 by 5 as well, and that will tell me how long it takes him to travel 5 miles. Did you get that? It takes him 12 minutes to travel those 5 miles. So we know it takes him 2 hours to travel the 50 miles. We know that it takes him 12 minutes to travel 5 miles. So can that help you work out how long it takes him to travel the whole distance? Now look at the last line of the question. That's what we really need to pay attention to. Because once you find out how long it takes him to travel those 60 miles, remember we know how long it takes him to travel 50 miles. We know how long it takes him to travel 5 miles, so you can work that out. But once you know how long it takes him to travel those 60 miles, tell us what time he arrives at the second town. He leaves at the same time as Annie, so that's the really important bit. What time does he arrive at the second town? Okay, so let's have a look at this last one on the last challenge now. We've done really well. Okay, so Ron has got 2 strips of paper. We can see them there, and we know that they're equal. They're the same length. So he cuts the first strip, the green one, into 2 pieces, A and B. Can you see how long A is? Yeah, A is 32 centimetres long. He then cuts the second strip into 2 pieces. Piece C is 9 centimetres shorter than piece A. So they've been now cut into different sizes, haven't they? Okay. Now we know that piece D is 15% longer than piece B. What's the length of one of the original strips of paper? So, to work this out, we need to have a little think about how big piece B is and how big piece D is, because we haven't got any measurements for those, have we? So how are we going to work those out? Let's just have a little think. Okay, so I've highlighted a piece of information. It's going to be really helpful to us. Is that piece C is 9 centimetres shorter than piece A. Now I don't actually have to work out how long piece C is, but that's still a useful piece of information. So C was with D. That means that D is 9 centimetres longer than B. Do you agree with that? So now we're going to think of B as being 100% and D as being 115%. Why have I done that? Have a look at the next piece of information. Okay, so the next piece of information tells me that piece D is 15% longer than piece B. So I know that 15% is 9 centimetres because I know that piece D is 9 centimetres longer than piece B. So don't forget that I said I found it useful to think of D as 115% because it's 15% bigger than B. And I thought of B as 100%. Now, 100% is the same as 6 lots of 15% and another 10%. What do I know about 15%? Can you think? Yeah, 15% is 9 centimetres. If I know that 15% is 9 centimetres, can I work out what 6 lots of 15% is? Yeah, I can. If I know that 15% is 9 centimetres, can I work out what 10% is? Yeah, I can because I can find out 5%, so then I can find out 10%. That should tell me, if I add all of those up, what 100% is. And don't forget, 100% is the same as B. Now, if you look at A and B, the green pieces, I know that A is 32 centimetres, and once I add to it how long B is, I will have the length of one of the original strips of paper. Okay, so that's the 10 challenges. That's all we have to do. Okay, so that is it for this half term. You've worked very hard, or some of you, I know you've worked very hard because I've seen the work you're doing. But I'm sure whatever you're doing at home to keep yourself happy and healthy and busy is very worthwhile, and hopefully we'll see some of you soon. Okay, take care and have a good half term. I hope the sun keeps shining for us.